Next is the Bibury Multipliers Pro multi-tool. It's a very inexpensive multi-tool that I bought for 30 euros on Amazon. And in this video I'm gonna use it a little bit and compare it to the Leatherman Surge. So you get a pouch. The pouch is decent quality. It looks a little bit cheap, but it actually works quite well. You get a nice belt clip on the back side, so you don't need to take your belt off. Pretty big improvement to the Leatherman Surge pouch, which is pretty cheap, I think. You get a bunch of different accessories, starting off with a lot of different bits, replaceable wire cutters with the Torx that you need to remove them, 2 different saw blades and the sheath for them, and the multi-tool itself. So a pretty good package for 30 bucks. The Leatherman Surge only comes with the tool itself and a file that you can use instead of the saw. The price on the Surge is about 160 to 180, so 6 times the price of this Bibury multi-tool right here. Now both of these tools are basically identical, so the Bibury is actually a clone of the Leatherman Surge, which legally speaking that's not wrong because the patents on the Leathermans have already expired. Now obviously I would much rather have them to make their own designs, but if you want a higher quality, inexpensive multi-tool, you almost have to buy a clone, because the ones that are not clones are most of the times not as good. As you can see, Leatherman is also not using the USA made stamp anymore on their multi-tools, because they have actually got into trouble because they are not manufacturing all the tools that go inside of their multi-tools in the US anymore. So I don't know if it's like morally wrong for a Chinese company to just copy their multi-tools, but Leatherman is also not super transparent with where everything is made. The big difference here, apart from the price of course, is that the Bibury one uses 3-dimensional bits. Now that's a great thing, we always wanted that, right? Because these are much better of course than the half-size bits that Leatherman is using, especially because they wear out so quickly and they're expensive to replace. The only downside here is that these bits use a bearing to hold them inside. So you cannot just go ahead and put your own bits in there because they will fall out. So that's a downside of this multi-tool. You have to use the Bibury bits that come with the tool, and there are certain companies that also make bits like these, but they are not as widely available. So that's a kind of a downside, and also kind of a positive thing about the tool, because 3-dimensional bits are still great, but replacement bits are not as widely available. I would much rather prefer if they would put the bearing inside of this holder, so we can use all kinds of different bits. But that's what you get here. Now I chose the black version of the Bibury multi-tool. So the difference here is that the black Surge is actually a black oxide, whereas the Bibury is just a paint. So you can see the paint coming off in certain spots. So if you don't like that worn finish or that worn look, you should stick with one of the stainless models for sure. The good thing here is that Bibury makes this tool in many different configurations, many different colors and tool sets. So some will have the scalpel instead of the file, and some will have less bits in the package. So the cheapest version has less tools with it. There's also a version that uses a clip. Now I didn't know that there was a version with a clip, but honestly this is too heavy to carry in your pocket. The Surge and the clone is a super heavy tool, and you almost need to carry it on your belt because it's just too heavy to carry around in your pocket all day. Now speaking of weight, the Leatherman Surge comes in at 345 grams, which is 12.1 ounces, and the Bibury comes in at 320 grams, which is 11.2 ounces. So 25 grams less, which is an ounce. So yeah, not a huge difference, but I think like an ounce in a tool is actually quite a lot. Now let's talk about the action of these tools. If you've ever had a Leatherman, you know they're pretty stiff and they will stay like that over time. The good thing here is that there is no play in the pivots right here. So this is a very secure tool. A big downside here is that you cannot close the tool with the pliers open. You have to close the pliers first and then close the tool. Otherwise the pliers will get stuck when opening. Now there are Leathermans that have like a much smoother action, but these most of the times have like play in the pivot, at least a little bit. And the big difference here to the Bibury is that the action is a lot smoother and there is no play in the pivots. So this is a very secure but smooth tool. If you closed it with the pliers open, it's absolutely not a big deal. The pliers will not get stuck. The tool will open smooth each time. Now in terms of the action of the main blade on the Leathermans, it's a pretty slow but firm action. Slight bit of blade play, but not really a lot. On this Bibury one, the action is pretty smooth, so you can even flick these open if you like to. Now there is no blade play here, which is good. So, and you can also not shake the blade out of the handle. So the action is smooth, but it's not a loose action, if you know what I mean. Let's actually compare all the tools to each other that are on these. Starting off with the main blade. You can see that the size is identical. The Bibury has more belly in the front, and the Leatherman has a little bit of a more aggressive angle towards the tip. A blade stock thickness is about the same. I don't see any difference here, but it should be mentioned that the Bibury has a slight bit of more material thickness at the tip. So the Bibury one has a stronger tip and this has a more acute tip. So this could be seen as a negative and also as a positive thing, depending on your preference when it comes to blades. Now in terms of materials, the Leatherman Surge uses a 420HC blade at 57 Rockwell, and this Bibury one has a 7CR17 blade, which is like a 440 steel, but it's not far off from 420. So these are actually quite comparable steels. It should be mentioned that the thickness behind the edge on the Leatherman is thicker and the Bibury is thinner behind the edge, even though it has a stronger tip. So technically the cutting potential on this Bibury multi-tool is a little bit higher. Let's look at the sharpness. Now I have already used the Bibury one. On the Surge, this is the factory edge. It's a okay sharpness for a multi-tool. It's not really refined though. It gets stuck quite often when cutting fine paper. And the Bibury one, even though I have used this already, seems to be quite good out of box. So good cutting edge on the Bibury multi-tool. Both of these ideally need a little bit refinement though. Now if you flip these over, we get the serrated blade. The difference on the serrated blades here is that they left the painting on the Bibury one. So ideally the painting should be removed before using it. I have used it already though with the painting on and it still cuts okay. It's just not ideal when it comes to paper because the painting keeps the blade from cutting really well. So the Leatherman has a better out-of-box serrated edge, but if you remove the painting on the Bibury, it should be fine. To me, the Leatherman Surge serrated blade also looks a little bit thicker on the tip, and it's also definitely thicker behind the edge. So again, the cutting potential on the Bibury is a little bit higher because there is less material behind the cutting edge. Now let's talk about the scissors. As you can see, one issue that a lot of Leathermans have is that the tool don't lock up the first time. You really have to force them into position. Now, even though these are the same locking systems, I didn't find this to be an issue on the Bibury one for some reason. The tools always lock up securely the first time you open them. The angle is a little bit different. The Leatherman has a more abrupt angle and this has a finer angle. Multi-tool scissors are never the best in my opinion. They always are a big compromise. Also, the spring always tries to push this part here open, so it's harder to operate. Yeah, I would give it to the Bibury one in terms of the scissors. I think it's just a better, more functional scissor. Now let's talk about the saws and the file. So the file on the Leatherman I think is a little bit higher quality just because it's made a little bit better, but the file on the Bibury works just fine. It's not bad at all. Now, as you might know, on the Leathermans, if you want to change the saw, you have to push this thing over and then move it in this direction, which can be a little bit tricky in like wet and cold conditions, I think. On the Bibury one, however, this is super simple and easy to replace. It's a very, very quick thing to do. Now, there is a downside though. The saws that the tool comes with do not close in the handle because they're too long. So that's actually an advantage on the Leatherman. However, since these are standardized saw blades, you can actually pick one that's long enough. You might even have these at home and they fit in the tool just fine. So yeah, it's a good thing that you can actually replace these. I think also the replacement saws that you can buy have less play in there. Now the saws that the tool comes with, they work pretty well. It's just because there is a little bit of play in there, I think you kind of waste a lot of energy as you use it. So I would like to see this being a little bit of a tighter fit, and yeah, this quick release option here is very nice for replacing, but it does not give the impression of like a super secure lock. So this should be a little bit stronger, but it works just fine. It's just a little bit of blade play. Now let's talk about the tools inside. I already told you about the three-dimensional bits. I think they work really well. Practically speaking, it's just a shame that you cannot replace them as easily with the bits you have laying around. The Leatherman uses the bottle opener on this side because there's only a half-sized bit, and then it has these three tools on the other side, and the Bibury one actually has the bottle opener also on the other side. These are pretty similar tools altogether. The angle on the awl is slightly different. I think I like the awl on the Leatherman a little bit better, but it's not a dramatic difference. Now let's talk about the pliers. Design-wise, these are the same. I found that it's a little bit easier to use the Bibury ones because the action is a little bit smoother, so you can open and close it a little bit quicker. Finer tasks are just fine. The Leatherman actually has two different angles, so you have a finer and a more abrupt angle. I guess for a different thickness of wire. Whereas the Bibury just uses one angle and then it has this relief on the bottom. Now I think the wire cutters worked quite well though. I used it on thinner fencing wire and it was very, very effective. And I also used it on thicker wire, which was a little bit more difficult to cut, but it was fine. I just needed to use a little bit more strength. And there is no damage other than like a little bit of that coating coming off on the wire cutters. Leatherman wire cutters, they have a better design on them because they have different angles. But I also think that these tend to chip out a little bit more often. This one didn't take any damage. I have multiple Leathermans that I have damaged wire cutters on. I cannot say though for sure which I like better. I think I like the design on the Leathermans better, but in terms of reliability, I think you need to change these more often. And these already come with replaceable wire cutters, which is great. So to summarize this whole video, I think the package that this Bibury multi-tool comes in with for the price is insane. There are so many features. I really like the three-dimensional bit drivers. I like the replaceable wire cutters. I think the saw has a little bit too much play in it, but other than that, all the other tools work just fine. I really like the blades on here. I think they are finer and thinner ground than on the Leatherman Surge. Yeah, I like the smoothness. I like that there is no play in the tools other than the saw. It's a pretty good tool for the price. Again, I would choose the stainless version if you don't like that the paint would be coming off very quickly. There are many different versions of this. You just have to look for the one that fits you most, I guess. Yeah, it's a shame that you cannot replace the bit drivers with normal bits. But I don't think we can really complain for the price we are paying here. These are just the better ones that are available in this price range. So I think this makes like a great gift for Christmas. It makes a great tool for yourself if you do want to have a Surge, but you don't want to have the price of the Surge. And just as a beater tool, I think this is fantastic. I still prefer the lighter multi-tools that are not as heavy as these, because these are quite a burden to carry all day. But overall, I think this is a fantastic tool for the price. So yeah, that's it for this video. It was just like a quick video, not really a long-term review. I will do another video in a couple of months to see how this tool held up. If anything got loose or broke on this, I will do another video about that. But as for right now, I can say this is a pretty good tool for the price. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and maybe see each other in another video.